App switcher. Close. Activate. Choice of games. Detail. Show stats. Chapter. A truly refined person. Chapter 2. Creme de la creme. Image. A truly refined person behaves with moderation around one's superiors. People who are overly deferential will bore, while those who chatter without regard for the setting will gain only distaste. From the philosophical considerations of a Lady Françoise Renault. Sunlight glints on the fish knife. Fabric rustles as Freddie opens her napkin. Lady Renault frowns at her, and she sinks down in her gilded chair. At the opposite end of the table, a crystal glass clinks lightly against the dessert spoon as Delacroix lays it down. Lady Renault toots. You are here to be refined, but this class has all the refinement of a coal face, she says. Again. Your set of cutlery sits in front of you, gleaming, on either side of your empty plate. You've been in etiquette class for an hour, and this is the practical assessment. I grab my glass and give a toast. It will add sparkle to the fake meal. Radio button, checked. 1. I rack my brains to remember my previous schooling. Radio, out of the corner of my eye, I watch the others to copy them. This is ridiculous. I protest that we should be learning something more important. Next, button. This is ridiculous. Out of the corner of my eye, I watch the others to copy. Out of this, next, button. If you can't remember the right thing to do, you can learn by imitation. Gonzalez looks like she knows what she's doing, moving half a second more slowly than her. You pick up the napkin with a deft motion and spread. At the head of the table, Lady Renault nods. Thank goodness Layla is paying some attention. As you carry on pretending to eat, Lady Renault makes several pointed remarks about performance in etiquette class being a reliable predictor for marrying well. She quotes from her book. Those who understand, maybe I'll find someone who's right for me here. Radio button. I wouldn't want to sleep with anyone, but I would like romance with the right person. It's unlikely that I'd want to sleep with someone, though it might happen. But I'd enjoy. I'll have my fun, but a romantic relationship isn't in my interest. Radio button. Unchecked. 4 of. Checked. Romance and sex are for other people. I don't. Next button. A marriage of convenience, perhaps. Playing the field outside of marriage, maybe. But you've known for a while that you wouldn't want romance in your life. Perhaps you will find someone who does not mind, or who feels the same. Marriage, of course, is the most frequent destination for Gallatin students, whether marrying for romantic reasons or more practical ones. A few Gallatin graduates move from finishing school to university, still fewer move into a career. Although some students do not marry straight out of college, engagements at this age are common. I'll marry if it gets me closer to my ambitions. Radio button. It seems I hope to distinguish myself in some other way than marriage. Radio button. Next. Text field. Next button. In your situation, you'll have a harder time than most to make a name for yourself, but if you're determined, you can forge your path. Gallatin colleges, and so, in the fortnight since Blaze's resignation, none of the teachers have mentioned her, and the other students are wary about discussing her, as though her bad fortune is contagious. Delacroix. The false meal finishes with marzipan fruit. Max throws a peach in Hartman's direction, and Lady Renault rings a tiny crystal bell for quiet. Next button. Competition is a healthy way of improving motivation. Hartman sits up very straight in their seat. Archambault Academy is a college on the other side of the valley. Delacroix yawns behind their hand. So we do a competition with them each year. Etiquette, and we haven't won for 10 years. Hartman glares at him. And at the end of the week, Lady Renault says, we will attend dinner at Archambault Academy, where you will put the lessons from this class into practice, and I expect exemplary behavior from all of you. Excited chatter spreads through the classroom. I encourage collegiate spirit. We're going to win. Radio button. Checked. I enthuse about going to see another college. I want to know whether those students are eligible for merit. I shrug artfully, with a pose of calm disinterest. Radio button. Unchecked. 4. Checked. Next button. Staring into the middle distance, you say, I don't see why colleges should be in conflict. Isn't it a distraction from what's important? Freddie frowns. Oh, the prize, Lady Renault says, will be announced at the dinner by Lord Haberlin. She glances at the grandfather clock behind her. Almost as soon as she does so, it gently chimes. To your next class, she says. Layla, please help me put the room away. The rest of the students file out. As he goes, Max mouths, you're in trouble with an ominous expression. Once the door closes, Lady Renault gestures for you to stand beside her desk. Gallatin students are renowned for the well-roundedness of their education, she says. I smile winningly and wait for her to continue. Radio button. Checked. 1 of 4. I repeat something from the prospectus that says, I say, I don't exactly follow you, Lady Renault. Next button. Lady Renault pauses, as though expecting you to speak. She shuffles through the sheaf of papers on the desk. You notice a couple of familiar-looking essays and school reports bearing your name. The teachers at Halsfield School were good enough to provide us with samples of your previous work, she says, and although in many areas you excelled, you were notably poor at maintaining a certain grace in social situations. This will not do at all, especially with the creme de la creme competition on the horizon, and the unfortunate situation with your parents puts you in a precarious position. And so you will be undertaking extra lessons with MX. Hartman, that sounds good to me. I always want to improve myself. Radio button. Checked. 1 of. Lie. Is this? I speak calmly but firmly. I protest passionately. Next button. Lady Renault gives you a real, bright smile, none of the thin-lipped smiles you've seen from her before. It transforms her face from its stern stillness, and for a moment you can glimpse the quick-witted socialite she must have been in her youth. Quite right, she says. If you keep that enthusiasm, you will fit right in at Gallatin. The bell rings for the end of break, and she gestures to the door. I look forward to hearing about your progress from MX. Hartman, you may go. As you leave, Carson bumps straight into you. With a startled exclamation, he stumbles backward. Sorry, Miss Brooks, he mutters. I didn't see you there. He is wearing gardening gloves and heavy boots. It was my fault, don't worry about it. Radio button. Can you look where you're going? Are you alright? Is something wrong? Radio button. Can you? It was my fault, don't worry about it. Can you? Are you alright? Is something wrong? Radio button. Just next button. Carson meets your gaze, looks like he would like to speak, then glances away. Very good, Miss Brooks, he says, with a quick bow. He knocks at Lady Reynolds' door, and before the door closes you hear him saying something about transplanting the cottonwood trees. From what you've seen, Carson does much of the heavy work around Gallatin, and I've always had servants around, so Carson's presence feels ordinary to me. I wonder how I hope I can get to know Carson someday. Radio button. Carson intrigues me. Next button. Carson intrigues me. I hope I can get to know Carson someday. I hope I can. Next button. Carson always speaks with the same stiff formality, but he's bound to have depth beyond that. Maybe you can talk to him properly, if he ever gets a moment's rest. The door closes with a click, and you hear no more. The rest of the day passes as normal, ending in the banquet hall for dinner. Despite the decadence of the first night's food and drink, the everyday meals are less than appetizing. Meaty stews with stodgy dumplings are par for the course, along with limp cabbage and wilted carrots. Dessert is steamed syrup pudding that has had most of the flavor boiled out of it, with thin custard. It's not to your taste, because it's far too overcooked for me. Radio button, checked. I'm used to more delicate fare. It's far too overcooked for me. I don't eat any meat. Radio button. I'm allergic to the nuts in the steam. I'm allergic to the milk in the custard. I don't eat pork, so some of the meat. I don't eat beef, so some. Next button. Am I hearing this? I didn't think you were the type to play games like this. I didn't think you were the type. Lady Reynolds said you needed to be calmer under pressure, they say with a small conspiratorial smile, and you follow them to the Clement. I thought we could go to one of the. Most of the other students show stats. Most of the other students seem to be enjoying it well enough, though Gonzalez occasionally makes wistful comments about the dinners at Ginnard International School. While the plates are being collected, Hardman catches your attention. I thought we could go to one of the study rooms, they say. It's quieter than the common room, and some people, a significant look at Max, find it hard not to disturb others. You follow them to the Clemency Building study suite. It sits beneath the common room, so you hear the thumping of footsteps and occasional muffled voices, but nothing too distracting. Hardman, Lady Reynolds said you needed to be calmer under pressure, they say with a small conspiratorial smile, and start to shuffle. So we'll play a few hands. I didn't think you were the type to play games like this. Radio button, checked. Am I hearing this right? You're choosing to do something fun? Radio button, I'm terrible at card games. All of them. Radio, well, it's nice to get to know you a little better. Radio button, I'm terrible at am I hearing this right? Am I hearing this right? Lady Reynolds, I didn't think you were the type to well, next button. Hardman does a final shuffle, then starts to deal. I do other things than being head prefect, they say, faintly put out. At Gallatin it's important not to make assumptions about your peers. They could be speaking verbatim from the Gallatin prospectus, maybe they are. You start to play. It quickly becomes clear that Hardman is very good, they consider their plays carefully, but not for too long, and although you keep your face still enough to win a couple of hands, they read you for the rest. I push on through the humiliation, even though it's not going well. Radio button, checked, 1 of 3. I convince Hardman to finish early and tell Lady Reynolds we did the whole session. Radio button. I distract Hardman from the game with a philosophical discussion about social graces. Radio button. Unchecked. 3 of 3. Next button. You grit your teeth and play on. Though Hardman is still in the lead, they loosen up a show stats. But you grit your teeth and play on. Though Hardman is still in the lead, they loosen up a little when they see how hard you're trying, and congratulate you on soldiering on. Not everyone would keep at, they say kindly. And I'll tell Lady Reynolds so. In the corner, the tall grandfather clock chimes softly. Hardman glances up. Ah, we're done, they say. I am sorry you've had to do extra work. I'm certain Lady Reynolds has your best interests at heart. I hope it wasn't too boring. Don't worry about it. I liked spending time with you. There's no sense pretending this is anything other than duress. Radio button, unchecked, 2 of 4. It was fine, but I'm glad to have some time of my own now. Radio button, next button, I give them a flirtatious smile. It was fine, but I'm glad to have some time of my own now. It was fine, checked, next button. Of course, Hardman says, ducking their head in an unusually diffident gesture. It was nice to have a break. They seem to replay what they just said, and scrambles to explain themselves. Not that I'm working too hard. The teachers here are expert at gauging the right amount we're assigned. I don't want you to get the wrong impression. The door slams open, button. Text, the door slams open. Freddie stands in the doorway, looking harried. Sorry to interrupt, she says breathlessly, but Max is saying he's going to sneak out, and I try to stop him, but... Hardman leaps to their feet and grabs their satchel. Just what we needed, they say through gritted teeth. Why doesn't Max ever learn? They take the stairs up 2 at a time, and you follow close behind. You open the door to see Max standing at the open window with his hand on the sill, and Hardman facing him with folded arms and a face like thunder. It's your last chance, Hardman says. Stay here, or I get Mr. Griffith. Max's lip curls. I'm going for a walk, that's all, he says. I'm not trashing anything, I'm not hurting anyone, I just want some fresh air away from stuffy do-gooders with sticks up there. Max, Hardman says, but their voice wavers. Hardman's shown weakness, and I can bulldoze them. I go outside with Max. Radio button. I tell Hardman that they should let Max go. He will. Hardman needs calm, firm support. I go to their side and tell Max not to leave. Radio. Checked. I tell Hardman to let Max out, but then next button. Standing shoulder to shoulder with Hardman, you fix Max with a stern look. Mr. Griffith won't be happy to hear about you breaking the rules, you say. Exactly, Hardman says gratefully. Max's fist clenches, and for a moment he looks a little like Blaze. But you do not back down. Eventually, Max shrugs in a clear effort to seem nonchalant. Whatever, he says. It looks like it's going to rain soon, anyway. He stamps off to the bathroom and slams the door. Hartman does not look pleased with their victory. They glare at the closed bathroom door as though it has personally slighted them. Why does Max always have to do this? How can I be a decent leader this year if I can't even make him stay here without him throwing a tantrum? I wish he'd just listened to begin with. I encourage Hartman to take a deep breath and calm down. It's not so bad. Radio button, checked. Checked. Maybe Hartman should think about themselves instead of spreading themselves so thin. I think we should take inspiration from Max. Next button. I know you're head prefect, you say, but things can't always go your way. Think of it as something to put on your university application. Hartman gives a deep sigh, eyes half closed, and when they look at you again, they seem a little mollified. I see your point, they say. All right. I'll take a moment in the common room. You can come along. If you want. I go along with them. I'd like to have time to talk. I can't go to sleep after all this excitement. I politely decline. I want some time to myself. Check. I shrug and let them go alone. Radio button. Next button. Hartman inclines their head and slips out, leaving the dorm quiet. Freddie laughs nervously. Are the two of them always like that? Delacroix stretches languidly. Most of the time, they say. Someone should lock them in a room. Either one of them would die or they'd come out engaged. Either way, it would be a resolution. Eventually everyone settles down, but there is a certain tension in the air, and it takes you a while to sleep. The weeks roll on, button. The weeks roll on, button. Text field. The weeks roll on, button. The trip to Archambault Academy approaches. Whenever they can, everyone talks about it. Miss Yalko and Mr. Griffith both tell their classes that if they hear the word Archambault one more time, you'll work in silence. That only serves to ramp up the excitement. Hartman spends much of their time arranging preparations for the visit, and you rarely see them outside of classes. They seem to be avoiding Max when they can, along with the fuss that comes with him. Max is often in and out of Lady Reynolds' office being reprimanded, and frequently crows about it in a dorm. He doesn't try to sneak out again, but whenever Hartman is around, Max manages to needle him incessantly. Of course, even now that you're settled in at Gallatin, you do not have time for everything. Where do you focus your attention? I get on with my studies quietly, even if it means I don't talk much. Check. I joke around. I visit other. Next. Text. Next. Button. You establish a reputation amongst the teachers for being a serious worker. Once, Miss Yalko tells you that you shouldn't hide your light under a bushel. You're perfectly capable of speaking up, she says, and as it is, your peers will underestimate you. You don't want that, do you? Still, your grades improve, and Mr. Blanchard gives you an encouraging smile whenever you pass him in the corridors. And then, amidst a whirlwind of excitement, the afternoon of the Archambault visit arrives. Next button. It's a crisp afternoon. The season is fully autumnal now, with the trees blazing scarlet and orange and a chill in the air. Your dorm mates are crowded in the bathroom, fixing their hair and adjusting their uniforms. Freddie is fussing over her shirt sleeves, complaining that the ink won't come out of the fabric. Hartman snaps that Freddie should have thought of that when there was longer than 20 minutes before leaving, and Freddie looks crestfallen. Don't worry, Freddie, Max says, leaning right up to the mirror and lining his eyes with dark coal. Hartman always flips their wig over things like this. Hartman, tight-lipped, does not respond. There, Max says, his reflection looking satisfied as you squeeze past, stand next to Gonzales, who is clumsily putting up her hair, and survey your reflection. It's not an occasion for wearing your own clothes, but you can tweak your look. I make myself look more glamorous, radio button. I adjust my uniform to make it more revealing, radio button. I make sure my clothes look precisely correct, radio button, unchecked. Check. I want to look artfully scruffy, radio, next, button. You adjust your shirt collar and sleeves so they are stiff and secure, and fix a tiny scuff on one of your shoes. Perfect. Clemency Building, the carriages are waiting, Mr. Griffith bellows from downstairs. Freddie squeaks and rushes for the door. You troop down to see Lady Reynolds and Mr. Blanchard being helped into a large, ornate carriage. Lady Reynolds is wearing a dignified sapphire-colored dress with pearl earrings, while Mr. Blanchard wears a dark suit. His shock of curly hair has been made sleeker, and as he steps in after Lady Reynolds, he looks nervous. 3 more two-person carriages await, their horses stamping and snorting in the fading afternoon light. Hartman glances in your direction. Would you like to go in together? I agree, and follow Hartman to the carriage. I'd prefer to go with Gonzales. I'd prefer to go with Max. Next, button. Hartman nods, and you climb into the carriage. You start to move. The driver is a skillful horsewoman, and the weather is gentle. The movement is much smoother than your arrival. As soon as the carriage is on its way, Hartman turns to you, hands clasped neatly in their lap. They have the determined, nervous look of an anxious thoroughbred. You'll support Gallatin tonight, won't you, Layla? If we don't make a decent start in the creme de la creme competition, we will be lagging behind all term. And we've lost so many times before. They are particularly nervous tonight. I investigate why. Radio, of course. We will beat them fair and square. Radio button, unchecked. Lock, next, text field, next, button. Hartman gives a relieved sigh. Oh, Layla, you don't know how much better that makes me feel, they say. I'm certain we'll have a chance to show them who we really are. The carriage follows the winding road down the valley before ascending. As the sky darkens, the landscape shifts to the appearance of a cultivated estate. Through a pair of pillars you go, and up a drive leading through scattered. The academy comes into view. An older building than Gallatin College, it's all dark stone and grandiose towers, with the look of the home of an eccentric member of a royal family. A show of wealth, but a different type to Gallatin. As the carriages move into the pool of lamplight at the entrance, Hartman takes a deep, calming breath. The carriage halts, button. You disembark, and Lady Reynolds leads you in a line to the vast entrance archway where a tall, jovial-looking gentleman in a dark suit is standing. He wears a cape trimmed with an ermine collar that gives the impression of a royal robe, and greets her cheerfully with clasped hands. Lady Reynolds, he says, his voice carrying over the group without effort. How wonderful of you to attend our little celebration tonight. Lord Haberlin, your invitation was too kind, Lady Reynolds says. Beside Lord Haberlin stands a student your age in uniform, with a silver badge pinned to one lapel. Lady Reynolds greets the student with a kiss to the cheek. He shares Lady Reynolds' dark complexion and eyes, and regal bearing. Lovely to see you, mother, he says. He clasps hands with each of the Gallatin students as you file past. When it is your turn, he gives you a warm, perfectly correct smile and holds out a hand. The Honorable August Reynolds, he says. I understand you are Layla Brooks. How pleasant. I shake his hand heartily, then punch him lightly on the shoulder. Radio button, checked. I shake his hand politely, as I've been taught. Radio button, unchecked. 2 of. Checked. I grip his hand. Next, button. August's smile widens, and he inclines his head. Very nice to meet you, he says. You and the rest of the guests drop off your coats in a snug cloakroom, and follow Lord Haberlin onward. To the ballroom, button. Text, to the ballroom, button. You are led to a vastly baroque hall where a string quartet is gently playing from a gallery above. The ceiling is covered with frescoes of mythological scenes. The gilded buttresses sparkle in the warm, bright light. The Archambault students give light applause as you enter, a sea of students your age and younger in dove gray uniforms, ties striped with pale blue. A stained glass window dominates the hall, lit with electric lights shining from outside. It depicts a selection of youths in clothing from hundreds of years ago, holding Archambault and Gallatin students alike are renowned for their tenacity and determination, he says. The creme de la creme competition represents our colleges coming together to showcase their skills and learning. And it gives me great joy to announce this year's prize. Prime Minister Lady Edith Belkey has kindly offered to donate the next foal to be born from her famous thoroughbred, Sapphires Amidst the Ocean Breeze, to the winning college. A murmur of surprise travels around the hall. Whichever college wins will gain a great deal of credibility in the world outside college. You could perhaps even gain political standing for being instrumental in Gallatin's victory, and make up for your parents' crimes. Lord Haberlin nods tolerant. A murmur of surprise travels around. Lord, just one more announcement before the festivities, he says, and beckons to one student who steps up to the lectern with a bouncy stride. His dark curls glint in the light. We are honored to welcome the heir to the Zale-Dome throne to our final year cohort this year, Lord Haberlin says. Prince Rosario, welcome. Around you, the Gallatin students look thunderstruck. Some of the Archambault students have put on a decent show of elegant disinterest, but many are craning to look at the prince in their midst. Rosario's cheeks dimple as he beams down at the crowd. I do hope you have a good evening, he says, with a faint accent. I know I'm looking forward to meeting you. You've never been to Zaledo, but you've seen paintings and photographs. He trots down the steps. Lord Haberlin nods to the musicians, and they strike up a jaunty, complicated tune. A pause before dancing, button. I go to the punch table to introduce myself to Florin Kramer. I go to talk with August Reynolds. Radio button, unchecked. Next, button. I go to talk with August Reynolds. I go to talk. Next, button. August smiles up at you from his couch, and pats the empty spot beside him. The rest of his friends shift to allow you to sit. Now that you're closer, August smells faintly of vanilla. His uniform is immaculate, and his dark braids fall perfectly to his shoulders. He looks amiably relaxed. I'm glad you came over, August says, because I wanted to ask whether you were quite all right. I heard Blaise Merkel resigned, and there was some noise about you being involved. Though his tone is light, and his hand rests casually on the back, it's not anyone's business. I avoid talking about it. Radio button, checked, 1 of 4. Check. I make a I tell August the truth, plain and simple. I pretend to be sadder about what happened than I am. Next, button. I think it's best that it's confidential, you say. August inclines his head politely. Of course, he says. He lowers his voice. That's wise. It must have been hard for you. You are left with a strong feeling of scrutiny, but you think you passed August's examination. The dance floor begins to fill, but after a couple of jaunty foxtrots, a gong rings out. Dinner is served, button. You file into the adjoining hall, where a feast of luxurious proportions awaits. The starter is chestnut soup with fresh, crusty bread, and plenty of white wine. Upon each table sits a shining ice sculpture of a swan and stag, a combination of the two colleges' coats of arms. In the noise and confusion before you are seated, Max sidles up to you and grabs you by the elbow. You have to help me, Delacroix won't. We're going to put a dent in Archambault's armor. I heard August Reynolds was going to make a speech. Let's use that. You cast your eye over the tables. August, the food has been served, which is perfect. I suggest Max tampers with it and I play lookout. Radio button. I'll seal August's speech notes. Radio button. I'll make my own toast and boost Gallatin's reputation that way. Radio button. Unchecked. 3 of 5. Checked. I'll tell Max directly that I won't go. I'll thank August graciously when. I'll tell Max directly that I won't go along with this. Honestly, I don't want to upstage August or Archambault. Next. I'll thank August graciously when he makes. Check. I'll tell Max directly that I won't go along with this. Next. Button. Next. Next. Text field. Next. Dinner rolls onward, with 4, or perhaps 5, courses, finishing with the chocolate mousse. Lord Haberlin scoops it with the same ceremony as carving a joint of meat, and servants glide between the tables to serve. Guests and hosts alike are replete when Lord Haberlin invites the crowd to the ballroom. Next. Button. The musicians have struck up for the final set of dances, and with the raucous good humor of food and drink, people pour onto the dance floor. Gonzales is in the middle of it all, dancing enthusiastically but haphazardly. From her flushed face, you think she may have had a little too much wine during dinner. You spot Prince Rosario at the drinks table, seemingly unaware of. At the edge of the dance floor stand August, Freddie, and Hartman. I investigate the cloakroom to see. I join Hartman and Freddie with August. Radio button, unchecked. 2 of 4. I intercept Prince Rosario at the drink. I join Gonzales. Next, button. They shift to allow you to join their little circle, and August continues talking. I'm planning to go to Gessner, of course, he says. My family's been going there for generations. Freddy's eyes are wide. How is the Archambault prefect? August is, of course, very much. I make Freddy look better to August, saying that she's smarter. I make Hartman look better to August. I turn the conversation to my advantage to show that I'm a good catch. Radio button, unchecked. 3 of 4. Check. All I want is for us to have a decent conversation. None of this. Check. Next, button. Next. Half an hour later, the gong rings again. Next, button. Next, button. Lord Taberlin addresses the crowd briefly, thanking Gallatin for attending. We have observed the conduct of the students tonight, he says, and from what I and the rest of the Archambault and Gallatin staff have seen, Gallatin has taken an early lead. But we have the rest of the year to see where the contest takes us. Lady Reynolds thanks him graciously, and leads you and the rest of the Gallatin students outside. You duck into your carriage, and Hartman steps in behind you. That was strenuous, they say as the carriage draws away. Their shoulders slump as though a weight has been lifted. It was good to see August again, though. He's always been so pleasant. Hartman's tone could rarely be turned casual, but they seem to be trying for it now. Watch out. I got the feeling that Freddy has her eye on August, too. Radio button, checked. 1. I'm interested in August, so I saw. You should focus on your place at Gallatin. That's what you're really passionate about. Check. Do whatever's right. I have feelings for. Next, button. Hartman, show stats. Hartman gives a sharp sigh. It's my final year, they say, disconsolately. We only have so long until we graduate and go to Fenberg for the season. If I don't have an engagement by the end of the year, I don't know if my parents would. They shake themselves, and grows more composed once more. Anyway, you're right. Concentrate on the college, and the carriage rumbles onward. Soon, the warm pinpricks of light from Gallatin College come into view, and you see the shadows of the entrance buildings, against the moonlit sky. The horses hoof slow. Next chapter, button. The air is clear and cool, and it is the beginning of your first Gallatin riding lesson. I'll make any spite you. Gonzalez race you to the stream. From the philosophy. Naturally, chapter 3, finding your place. Image. Naturally, people with common interests will congregate, such is the way of the world. Problems arise when one attempts to socialize where one is unwelcome, or when one makes inappropriate decisions about who to spend one's time with. Life, from the philosophical considerations of a Lady Francoise Reynolds. Race you to the stream. Max calls out at the head of the group, nudging his horse's flanks with his heels. I'll make any spite you. Gonzalez yells, laughing. The air is clear and cool, and it is the beginning of your first Gallatin riding lesson. The Gallatin grounds are behind you. Before you, the hills and mountains. Your mayor, Taberlin, snorts and strolls without much interest in the other horses or the world around you. Carson is talking quietly to Freddy, who looks absolutely terrified to be on horseback. Hartman's stance is perfect. Delacroix holds the reins loosely, and their horse seems used to such treatment, following Hartman stolidly. No, I think I'm all right now, Freddy says uncertainly, and Carson guides his own horse to your side. Are you used to horses, Miss Brooks? Do you require assistance? I'll pretend to need help, as I want to get to know Carson better. Radio button. I'll ask Carson for help with a hint of flirtation. Radio button. I would like help, but I don't want to make a fuss. Radio button. Unchecked. 3 of 6. Check. I race ahead with Max and Gonzalez. I say I don't need help, and I volunteer to help Carson with Freddy. Next, button. Despite your practice with horses and Tarragon's placidity, it's different riding over this terrain. I could do with some help, you say. Carson nods briskly and deftly attaches a guide rope to Tarragon's bridle, talking you through the process. He clearly knows what he's doing. Tarragon's easy enough, he says quietly. You should be all right once you're used to the mountains. When I first rode out here, I couldn't stand thinking about the drop, but I just pretended it wasn't there. It's the most you've heard Carson talk since you met him. There's a freer look in his expression, more relaxed than the blank formality you've seen when he is on the Gallatin grounds. You ascend the hill, button. The picnic spot is at the top of the next rise. A small copse of trees provides shade, and the horses gently crop the grass while you open the picnic bags. The sandwiches are corned beef, rather dry, along with a couple of wilted lettuce leaves. Hartman eats theirs neatly before opening a book. Freddy wolfs hers down with gusto, while Max wrinkles his nose and abandons his after only a few bites. He lies down on his back, squinting up at the sunlight through the trees. We only have one more year at Gallatin, now that we're 18, Max says to Delacroix lazily. Are you going to see the St. Claudine statue before you leave? You recall St. Claudine from your studies at Halsfields, though Halsfield focused more on St. Tabitha. Delacroix bites their lip. In the dappled sunlight, their skin looks tawny against their pale. Carson looks over his shoulder. The crying statue, you mean? Freddy snorts. That's ridiculous. Statues don't cry. It'll be some superstition. Delacroix sits up very straight. You don't know what you're talking about, they snap. So is the earth being flat, Freddy. I'm skeptical, and want to find. A crying statue sounds exciting. How can we see it? Radio button. That sounds ridiculous, and I mock Delacroix for their credulity. Radio. I'm intrigued about the truth of this, and ask about it delicately to avoid conflict. Radio button. Unchecked. Next, button. I'm intrigued about the truth of this. I'm intrigued. Next, button. You spread your hands in a peacemaking posture. Freddy, what have you heard about this statue? Have you seen it yourself? Freddy frowns. Well, no, she says sulkily. I know St. Claudine was killed for being too scandalous, or something, which just shows what the church is like. Actually, she was bricked up because she saw visions, Delacroix says. She saw into the other world, and the church was. They sound unsettlingly admiring. Carson squints up at the sky. The debate quiets during the journey back. Freddy is too busy trying to keep control of her horse to talk, but once the horses have been led into the stables and Hartman has returned to the dorm, Delacroix turns to you and Freddy. I'm going to prove that the statue's real, they say. And Layla, I was only being polite. I don't think it's real. Radio button, check, if you insist. Radio button, all right. You'll only get in trouble if I don't help. Radio button. Uncheck. If you insist. If you insist. All. Fantastic. When do we start? Radio button. Next button. Delacroix ignores your uncertainty and shoots Freddy a smug look. From Tarragon's stall, Carson gives a quiet cough, then emerges. I couldn't help overhearing the discussion, he says, with spectacular understatement. I've seen the statue, and the teachers are at lunch. You could look at it now and no one would see you. Delacroix grabs your elbow. Carson has a key. They hiss. I ask directly whether Carson has a key. I ask a teacher if we can look at the statue in I'll sneak into the lounge with Freddy and Delacroix so they can see the statue for themselves. Next button. I ask a teacher if we can look at the statue in exchange for helping with a chore. Radio button. Unchecked. 2. Next button. Next. Miss Dalka. I'll impress her with the drama of it all. Radio button. Unchecked. Mr. Blanchard. I doubt he'll suspect anything unusual is going on. Radio button. Unchecked. 2 of 3. Check. Miss Dalka. I'll impress her with... Next. Text field. Next button. While one of the servants clears the plates from the teacher's table, Miss Dalka is talking animatedly to him. He is responding politely, but with an expression. Miss Dalka flashes you a bright smile. Layla, you smile back at her, and indicate the... Delacroix mutters something ominous behind you about revealing what's going on, but Miss Dalka looks intrigued. Oh, that sounds fascinating. And I hate manual labor, so that works out for me, too. Delacroix looks surprised. Miss Dalka's eyes dance. She passes. Next button. The teacher's lounge is up the main spiral staircase in the entrance building, along the corridor from the nurse's office. The door is heavy, emerald green, and locked. Inside, the lounge is opulently decorated in much the same style as Lady Rin. Delacroix tugs your elbow. There it is. Next button. Following Delacroix's gaze to a shallow alcove, you see the statue of a robed woman, Saint Claudine. A couple of feet high and carved in unpainted granite, it looks out of place beside the swans and other finery, but the lamp beside it illuminates a faint sparkle amongst the gray that gives it an ethereal look. Miss Dalka flings out her hand to the statue. There you have it, she says. Saint Claudine, in all her glory. Despite her usual skeptical manner, there is a note of respect in her tone. You have a few minutes to contemplate the saint. Is there a shadow of darker stone where tears have tracked? Perhaps. When you shift, it doesn't quite look like a trek of the light. Delacroix clasps their hands, transfixed. Freddy bites her lip thoughtfully. Miss Dalka breaks the silence. You'll have class in 10 minutes, she says. As much as you might like to miss it, Freddy splutters in protest. You ought to get there. You troop out, and Freddy turns to you. Well? Convincing Freddy that the statue is genuinely magical may be a challenge, but at least you have Delacroix to assist you. I try to convince Freddy that the historical accounts are true. It's logical that I talk passionately about being aware of what we don't know about the world. Radio. I encourage them both to be more secure in their own beliefs. I talk passionately about being aware of what we don't know about the world. Next button. I encourage them both to be more secure in... Next button. It doesn't matter what I think, you say. Only that you're secure and happy in what you think. Freddy frowns, but Delacroix is nodding. You're right, they say, and they're a little stiffly. Freddy holds out a hand. I won't make comments about it, she says. It wasn't nice. They shake hands. They don't go so far as to apologize, but when Freddy heads down the corridor towards class, Delacroix sighs with relief. It's a shame she doesn't understand, they say. You walk to the top of the stairs, where Delacroix leans over the stone rail and watches the stream of students emerging from the banquet hall. But I think you do, they say as they're pale. I don't know, perhaps I would. That sounds ominous. Radio button. I wonder what that'll involve. Radio. I brush my hand against theirs. Radio button. Unchecked. Next button. I wonder what that'll involve. That sounds ominous. That sounds next. Text field. Next button. I'll tell you about it when it happens, Delacroix says softly. While you're standing there, the warning bell for the end of lunch rings. You follow Delacroix downstairs to class. 2 weeks pass. Button. While you're standing there, 2 weeks pass. Button. As autumn well and truly settles in over Gallatin, Delacroix As autumn well and truly settles in over Gallatin, Delacroix and Freddy make an unofficial, wary truce. You study furiously, spending much of your prep time buried beneath piles of papers. Late one morning, Miss Dalka leads her philosophy class outside where Wide's mule-drawn wagon is waiting, loaded with crates. Carson sits on the driver's box and tips his hat to the group. Apparently it's traditional for students to bring food to the Gallatin miners at this time of year, Miss Dalka says. She looks faintly put out as she adjusts her fur hat. So, this is our time to help the populace. Max bounds aboard, helping Delacroix up behind him. I can't wait to get out in the open, he says happily. We're so cooped up inside. Yes, well, Miss Dalka says as she steps up. I'd be more excited if we were doing something actually useful. We are helping, though, aren't we? Gonzalez points out. Between her and Max, they've taken up most of the bench. I close my eyes and enjoy the outdoor air. Radio button. I roll my eyes openly. I argue that helping is helping, even if Miss Dalka would prefer something else. Radio button. I sigh. I'd rather do something more practical to help. I roll my eyes openly. I roll my eyes open. I close my eyes and enjoy. We are helping, though, aren't we? I close my eyes and enjoy. Next, whatever happened. Next, button. Carson flicks the mule's reins, and the wagon rumbles off. The trees are circling the pretty, flower-filled perimeter of Gallatin town. The wagon passes into mining country. Freddy murmurs that, I hear the mines are most lucrative. Miss Dalka says, why don't we get better food, then? Max says loudly, and Gonzalez and Delacroix stifle snorts of laughter. Miss Dalka looks serene. That's a good question, Mr. Van Meyer, she says, and starts discussing labor laws and common practices in modern Westerland. Max yawns ostentatiously. The wagon draws up on a scrubby patch of grass. A tent is already set up and a group of roughly dressed miners are mingling on the green. Good morning. Carson leaps to the ground, and you disembark with the rest of the students. One middle-aged woman steps forward, beaming, and heartily shakes Miss Yalka's. I'll encourage enthusiasm with good cheer and a friendly smile. Radio button. Checked. 1 of 4. I catch the reluctant miner's eye and share a sympathetic mocking glance to. I greet the woman loudly. I hang back and observe the miner's attitudes. Radio button. Next button. Come on, everyone, you call. This will be a great occasion. At your side, Hartman nods graciously. Exactly, they say with a pointed look at the skeptical workers. One of the workers sighs and joins the woman. The tension has broken, and everyone mingles with more enthusiasm. Following Miss Dalka's directions, you help Carson and the others haul barrels and crates off the wagon. Miss Dalka purses her lips as she surveys the green. Hartman, get to the tent and start cooking, she says. Lady Reynolds said your beans are excellent. Carson, set up the tables, and Max, you serve. Her gaze falls upon you. I volunteer to serve food with Max. Radio button. I want to set up with Carson. Radio button. I'll make the food with Hartman. Radio button. Next button. I'll make the, her gaze falls upon you. Hartman. I volunteer to serve food with Max. Next button. Gonzalez, show stats. Gonzalez bounces alongside Carson to set up the tables, while Delacroix, Freddy, and Hartman sequester themselves in the tent to cook. This is great, Max whispers to you. All we have to do is wait, and then throw out some plates. Easy. Still, your relaxation does not last long. Soon, a cauldron of beans is bubbling on the burner, vegetables are being fried, and the miners have settled at their picnic tables. I'll have green beans and carrots with mine, one worker calls to you. Actually, no carrots. I'd like sausages on the side, and extra green beans, says another. Max emerges from the tent balancing 3 plates in his arms. Why can't they just leave the carrots if they don't want them? He demands. Miss Dalka is sitting upwind of the cooking smoke, sketching on a thick pad of paper. This is carrot. The important thing is remembering everyone's orders. Radio button. Checked. 1. I focus on style. If I entertain people, I act unruffled by the pressure of the situation. Radio button. Unchecked. 3 of 4. Checked. I ask Miss Dalka to help us, and refuse to let it go. Radio. Next button. It'll be a few. Show stats. It'll be a few minutes, you say, but the workers are too busy chatting and calling to Max to hear. You cast about, then grab a serving spoon and thump it on the nearest table. The miners fall silent. Thanks, you say. If you can let us know your orders slowly, we'll get them to you as soon as we can. Your voice is firm but calm. The chatter quiets down, making it far easier for you and Max to figure out who wants what, and lunch goes marvelously. Carson starts clearing away the plates, and Miss Dalka motions to the rest of you to do the same. While you work, the middle-aged woman who shook Miss Dalka's hand stands to speak. Thank you, Gallatin students, for a brilliant afternoon, she says. Let's have a cheer for Gallatin College. The miners clap and cheer before drifting off past the workers' houses, meeting a crowd of others arriving back from their shifts. As you watch, your gaze falls upon what looks like a familiar figure. But surely not. Blaze button. Text field. Blaze button. Amongst the crowd, and wearing rough overalls, it's hard to tell, but the girl looks for all the world like Blaze, down to her build and her smooth black hair. But why Blaze would be here after her expulsion is anyone's guess. I call out to her. Radio button. I tail her through the crowd. Radio. I call her Miss Dalka and ask her what's going on. Radio. I ask one of the miners who the girl is. Radio button. Unchecked. Full. Check. Next button. Remember earlier how we told you that the first 3 chapters are available for free? This is to find out what happens next, please purchase the remaining chapter. Buy it now for $9. If you've already purchased, click here to restore text field. CLK link. 2:28 p.m. Static control center. Selected. Screen.